Hello and welcome to the Geek Battle Gaming YouTube channel. Today we are going to be taking a deep dive about the Steam Deck. Yes, in this we have the absolute wonderful console of joy, the behemoth that is the Steam Deck. And we're going to be doing a deep dive into how good this thing is now that it has been out for 2 years. So without further ado, let's get into it. Bosh! The Steam Deck has now officially been out for 2 years. How time has flown for the handheld PC. I mean, I've not had mine for quite 2 years, as I ordered it when it first launched and then had to wait a little while for mine to arrive. But I've been following the device for at least 2 years and had mine for at least a year and a half, and I think it's time to deep dive into the Switch beta and see, is the Steam Deck still awesome? Throughout this deep dive, I'll take a look at the Steam Deck, what features it has, the various options you have in models available, how easy it is to use, and most importantly, what games it will give you access to. The first thing I need to do is clarify which model of Steam Deck I'll be looking at in this deep dive, and mine is the 512GB LCD model, which until the OLED models launched just a little while ago were the best model available. If you're considering which model to get, I'd usually say my advice is to get the best model that is available as long as you can afford it. I like the screen on my LCD version and am truthfully not fussed about the OLED model in this regard. But if I was buying today, I would probably aim for the 1TB OLED. My 512GB LCD Steam Deck comes with an anti-glare screen, which the lesser 64GB and 256GB models that originally launched did not. The OLED model features a 7.4-inch screen, compared to the 7-inch screen of my LCD model, and the OLEDs also are HDR screens with a refresh rate of 90Hz compared to the LCD 60Hz. So definitely the OLED model has the prettier screen, but I again haven't had any real complaints about the LCD screen on my one. Outside of the screen, I'd say to avoid the original 64GB model, not only because it's a pathetic amount of space for the potentially unlimited amount of games you may want to install, but because the memory in the 64GB model is eMMC, whilst all the other models have the much faster loading NVMe solid-state drives. Of course, whichever model you have, I'd recommend you using the largest and fastest micro SD card you can afford in that. I have a U3 512GB micro SD card inserted, and this gives me double the space. Even this though can quickly fill up. So if you do have just the 64GB models or even the 256GB models, sure, you could get a 1TB memory card, or maybe even larger than that in the future, and put it in there and you'll have plenty of space, but I still think you want to have as much space as possible on the actual device. Valve have made it easy to upgrade the internal hard drive in any model, although this isn't what they'd actually recommend, and it's something I wouldn't recommend doing, at least not for me, for the foreseeable future, as even though this is advertised as a somewhat user-friendly process, I'm generally happy to go with pretty much any gaming device as it comes out of the box, unless there's an incredibly good reason. The battery on the OLED may be about 25 to some say more than that, up to 50% better than the original model, but this will depend significantly on what games you're playing on it at the time. And this may be a significant difference maker for some, but as we'll get into, depending what game you're playing on the deck, the battery can maybe last 1 to 4 or 5 hours anyway. I also believe the Wi-Fi of the OLED model is also faster, but essentially it's not a massive upgrade from one device to the next. It's not like going from one iPhone model to the next one, which even that is not always a huge difference, but the OLED has a marginally larger OLED display with a better refresh rate, slightly faster Wi-Fi and a better battery. But since my model is the anti-glare 512GB LCD model, that's the one that we're going to continue to look at in today's discussion. The Steam Deck, whichever model you have, is a large device. It's ginormous in fact, and as a handheld, it's not at all pocketable. But when you consider that these can be very expensive, you probably don't want to have something like this just loose in your back pocket anyway. Despite its size, it's actually very comfortable to hold. In my experience, you'll want to be able to rest your arms on a table or a cushion, and it is great to play whilst laying down, but you may start to notice the weight after a while. So let's talk about how comfortable this thing is. The controls on it are great. It looks like it's going to be a bit of a nightmare because the D-pad is as far high up and as far in the left-hand corner as it could possibly be, and the same with the diamond configuration of action buttons on the right-hand side. But these are actually really well positioned, and they also then have some really nice and comfortable thumbsticks. It has the triggers on the back, or the paddles as I think they are nowadays called, and then it has the two touchpads which give a really good feel. Just as you move your thumb over it, you'll get a little bit of haptic feedback. This is just a fantastic device to be able to hold in the hands and play games with. It's really comfortable, and it's just one of the best designs for a handheld I've ever had. When I go back to playing my Nintendo Switch after this, with the weird split D-pad and just the awkward positioning of things, it feels terrible. This feels like a premium device, and it is a premium device. I can't get enough of it. It also comes with a touch screen, and it's so customizable that basically you can sort out probably any of the games that you'd play on it to play exactly as you want to play them. And that's not all. With Bluetooth connectivity, and you could put this thing stood up on a stand. You could use any of the other controllers that you may own. If you've got, say, an Xbox controller, or you want to connect a keyboard and mouse via a dock, then you can pretty much control this however you want to. You'll probably also quickly notice that there is some warmth that comes from the device, and you're definitely going to notice noise from the fan. I've yet to do a test to see if the heat from this thing can fry an egg, but I'm inclined to think you can probably at least get it started. You'll want to have a carry case for your Steam Deck, and although I've not taken the probably sensible steps to get a silicone case and a screen protector, it would probably be sensible to get a silicone case and a screen protector. What can I say? I'm either more confident I can be careful with my Steam Deck than others, or it's just because I like to live dangerously. The truth is, it's something I think about every time I use the console, but then do nothing about. Let's talk about games, and what games you can expect to play on the little, well, huge wonder from Valve. Valve are the creators of the Steam Deck, and they're also the creators of Steam. So this device naturally runs Steam OS, which is designed to work well with the software from your Steam library. As it happens, whilst there are other options like the Epic Games Store, my collection of PC games, like probably the vast majority of PC gamers out there, is primarily on Steam. If you want to play games on this from other stores, it is possible, but it's effectively a handheld PC and has a PC mode which you can install other operating systems that you could use, like Windows if you want to. And once again, for me, I'm happy to use this with the Linux-based operating system in desktop mode. But truthfully, today I only ever use desktop mode when I'm setting up adding emulators and games that I would like to appear on the home screen. It's worth noting that not everything you may have in your Steam library will work on the Steam Deck. This is a console-ized version of a PC after all, and as a result, specs and compatibility is going to be a pain much more than if you were just to use your Nintendo Switch or PlayStation Vita. Yes, that's right, I said PlayStation Vita. That said, even though those games require downloads and updates these days, so, you know, it's kind of all much of a muchness. But the point is, you shouldn't expect this to work in every instance. This isn't a Nintendo Game Boy where you can just plug in Pokemon Gold and it just works. I recently had the system do an update and then it didn't want to load past the Steam icon as it was booting up. I had to Google a fix for this, and basically using a button combo, I put the device into some sort of safe mode and reverted it back to an older operating system version. I've never had to do that to play my Tiger Gamecom. So, from the main menu, you'll be able to access your Steam library and the Steam store, and unless you've never owned a PC, I imagine that most people will sign into Steam and then have the magic of seeing all of their Steam games list now available in portable form. This was like getting a new, more powerful Switch and discovering it came with 200 games out of the box. Yeah! Except for it's just my PC games, which, you know, is still pretty cool to see them, like, on a handheld. Valve have made a big push for games to be Steam Deck compatible, which is both good but interesting as a concept. If developers are now considering making it so their newest games can run well on the Steam Deck, this may mean that their games are in some way limited compared to if they just shot for the stars and designed a game that needed the beefiest PC imaginable. But I guess this is just like any games being held back by versions needing to run on high-end consoles. A top-end gaming PC will be able to run things with settings all the way up, but you shouldn't expect your Steam Deck to have everything turned on to max in the settings. Speaking of which, running games on Steam OS, you will have a lot more options to make things less rough around the edges or more rough around the edges, as you can optimize things a little bit. But bit by bit, there are more games that are listed as great on deck, and these are ones that are tested and verified and considered to run really well on the Steam Deck. The bad news is that not all of the games work this way by a long shot. But the good news is that even if a game isn't listed as great on deck, it doesn't mean that it's not great on deck and won't work just absolutely playable. So it just means that perhaps it hasn't been optimized yet, or maybe it just hasn't been tested enough for it to be added to the verified list. Now, I don't have the largest Steam library in the world, as I consider myself more of a console gamer, but that said, I still have a Steam library of about 350 games. That's crazy, right? I can truthfully say this is a lot of Humble Bundle downloads and some other sales, but has started to grow as a result of my purchase of the Steam Deck. Of my 300 plus games, only about 74 were listed as great on deck. Now, that's about a quarter or less of my games. Now, I'm sure there will be compatibility lists all over the internet, so it may be worth checking to see if your favourite games will work on your deck. Again though, I'll mention that even if they're not listed as great on deck, it doesn't mean they won't work. I think sometimes a game may not get the nod if perhaps it requires a keyboard or some other peripheral that isn't built into the deck, but hell, like the Steam Deck has a virtual keyboard option, and as a handheld this may be enough to get a game up and running, even if it's not on the list. Games that are listed as great on deck from my library include Batman Arkham Knight, Alan Wake, Control, Fire Pro Wrestling, Broken Sword, Resident Evil 4 Remake and Resident Evil Village, Metal Gear Solid 5 and Horizon Zero Dawn. Examples of games that are listed with the yellow warning of playable or the question mark of unknown in my collection include the bunch of Alone in the Dark games, Injustice 2 and others. My copy of Curse of Monkey Island is listed as not working, and whilst I've not played it all the way through, it has worked for me. Likewise, my copy of Quake 3 Arena played great, but on the main menu, when I'd move the cursor about, it had a graphical glitch which left a trail wherever the cursor went. The actual game though, in the arena, was just fine and played great for me. As an example of a game that doesn't work, the first Metal Slug game is listed as not working, and when I launch it I can hear the music but I cannot see the game. Likewise, I had a similar issue with the first Tomb Raider game. It would load the interesting cutscene at the beginning, and then when it would actually get to the gameplay, I could hear Lara running around, but I could not see Lara running around. So it's a good job that a HD remaster of the Tomb Raider trilogy is just coming out then, because my Steam Deck doesn't want to play ball after the fancy 1996 cutscenes have finished playing. So yeah, whilst I can play a ton of games on it, it doesn't fully give me everything I can play on my gaming laptop. But my gaming laptop is a beast and won't fit in my pocket. And by pocket, I mean the carry case in my backpack. I have taken my Steam Deck to medical appointments where there are long waiting times, and it's useful on holiday or on flights and things, but I've also felt nervous carrying it around. I'm not even really sure why, but because I've had occasional game glitches on it, and it is more expensive perhaps, I just feel like I'm more afraid that one day this will just brick. Maybe because it's got a loud fan in it, it feels like there's more moving parts, perhaps also because you can't pick it up off a store shelf. It just feels like something where it's going to be a hassle if something went wrong. I don't ever really have this worry about the Switch though. But what else can the Steam Deck offer? Well, it's brilliant for emulation. I've probably used the deck more for being my all-in-one emulation device than I have for using it for my Steam library. There's loads of great guides online, but it doesn't take much to be able to add emulator cores from your classic collection of games to the system, and you can even get to select them with artwork from the main menu on your Steam library. To do this does require a little tinkering around in desktop mode, but it wasn't a difficult process. I've recently got into using my Analog Pocket, which is a great device with FPGA cores of a bunch of classic systems and will arguably give a better performance on playing older games for the Game Boy, Super Nintendo, Nintendo Entertainment System, Mega Drive, and with the FPGA technology, this should be a better performance than what you'd get just from an emulator. Truthfully, I don't really notice much difference, but one thing I do know is that the Steam Deck will allow me to relive my library of Sega Saturn, Nintendo 64, PS1, GameCube, Dreamcast games, and so many more, which the Analog Pocket or pretty much any other device out there, unless it's a portable PC, just can't handle. In terms of all of the games that you can get to run on this thing, basically it is second to none. And yeah, I know there are now other handheld gaming PCs out there, and some of them run Windows natively, but the Steam Deck is still the top dog for me in this respect. One thing I love is that I could get a relatively cheap dock for the system, and this was a third-party one from Amazon, and it works great. I mention this because, as you'll probably have seen on my review of the Analog Pocket, you can only use the official dock with that system, and it costs a fortune. My dock for the Steam Deck lets me connect my deck to the TV or to my PC with a capture card, and so I can get gaming footage and do streams with it. I also have 3 USB Type A ports, a connection for a hardwired internet connection, and it is infinitely better to do that than to use the Wi-Fi, and I can easily expand this dock further with another USB hub or plugging in things to use memory cards on it. It's great. And this was really quite cheap. Now, as someone who likes to make videos about games and likes to stream games on occasion, I've enjoyed using the Steam Deck hooked up to my PC to record and stream games. I find it the better option than rather having one PC having the task of running the games and recording or streaming at the same time. Using a Steam Deck hooked up to a PC is finally giving me the 2 PC solution that I saw everyone rave about in their gaming PC setup videos a couple of years ago. Of all of the gaming devices I own, I have to say that my Steam Deck is probably the best, but despite that, it's one that at times I've put away for days or even a couple of weeks at a time. But what I can say is that if I could only play one gaming device going forward out of all of the ones I own, I would choose this. I would definitely choose the Steam Deck. It can be connected to a TV, but it's also portable. It's got all of the controls and layouts to play most types of games, and it's also got a library of PC games and pretty much can run any emulator game that is currently possible to play. Now, I probably have overlooked it at times in the last couple of years because I like to play a range of different games on different consoles. And especially as I've got into making videos about games and systems, it's sometimes lingered in the background whilst I'm playing on Switch or something unusual and random like the Playdate. But what else can I say? This is a great device, and after 2 years I have used it a lot. And I'm probably going to use it a lot more going forwards. Just the more I get into it, the better it seems to become. It's got really comfortable controls, and it is comfortable in the hand, and it feels like a cool device. So what do you think of your Steam Deck after 2 years? Or maybe you've just picked up one of the fancy new OLED ones? Let me know in the comments. So that is my review and deep dive into 2 years of the Steam Deck. Do you still use yours on a daily basis? Is it the best thing of all time? Or is it just too big? Is it just too complicated and you just want something simpler from a handheld? Do you prefer this to your Nintendo Switch? Or is this your absolute must-take with you absolutely everywhere? Let us know. What are your tips and tricks for getting the most out of this? Put it into the comments. I respond to everything. If you haven't done so already, I would appreciate if you would smash that subscribe button here on the Geek Battle Gaming YouTube channel. Head over to www.xstreamed.tv to get the article version of this discussion, and if you haven't done so already, check out all of our other YouTube channels as well. This is the Geek Battle Gaming YouTube channel, and on the channel you're going to find all kinds of deep dive reviews and explorations of consoles, handhelds and games, and there are a bunch of documentaries that I've got in the works and already some on the channel. So with that, until next time, stay safe, always stay extremed, and ciao for now. Boom! And I'm off the air. I'm going to go play some Steam Deck.